The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, good afternoon everybody. Welcome to this webinar from Dansk IT. We really appreciate that all of you have joined us. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Aditya and I'll be taking you through this webinar today. If you have any questions, you can post it on the chat to the organizers or to everybody, and we can answer it. If we see there is a relevant question on the slide, I will answer it immediately, or we can take it at the end. All right, should we start? Let's go. The webinar is about how to overcome typical Selenium test automation challenges and the Agile connection. And the way I'll just start is I'll just give a quick introduction about Agile Testing Alliance as well. Agile Testing Alliance is a non-profit body, and we are trying to spread Agile testing awareness across the globe. And we would like to thank Dansk IT for allowing us this platform to share this wonderful webinar. Thank you so much, Dansk IT. I'll share this presentation and I'll quickly introduce myself. I am a co-author of a book on Selenium. I am also a licensed trainer for Agile Testing Alliance. Guys, if you are not able to hear me, just post it on organizer. Is it okay? Is it better? All right. Yeah, so I'm just close to my microphone now. And just to let you know that I'm passionate about taking presentations and mentoring people around the globe, especially on the topic on both Agile testing, Selenium, and my current research area is behavior-driven testing with tools like Cucumber, Selenium, and Capybara. And I'm also looking into a pairwise testing, orthogonal array design technique on optimizing the Agile testing around basically different domains. My primary domain is finance. All right, let's start. Before we start and talk about the Selenium challenges, let's talk about Agile connection and how basically Selenium is one of the most important tools and why it is most appropriate for using in Agile. What does Agile mean? Here is a definition of Agile. We say Agile means something which is, and this I'm taking from Merriam-Webster dictionary. It means, or the definition given by the dictionary here is marked by ready ability to move with quick, easy grace, like an agile dancer, or having a quick, full, resourceful, and adaptable character, like an agile mind. And what can be more agile than our mind? And what we are talking about is in software development, can we be really agile? And what would be our parameters for calling ourselves agile in software development? There are 4 parameters around what basically we say is agile. Agile is being responsive to change. We have to be fast. We have to be nimble. We have to be adaptable and flexible. All right, so when we are talking about Agile being responsive, we want our ability to manage things such that whenever there is a requirement, people can change that, and we are responsive to change. Is Agile popular? It's getting extremely popular, that is for sure. And let me give you some overview of where and how basically Agile is being used. The question for us to answer is, what is the frequency of release for Facebook? How many times basically there are patches for Facebook? And I expect that people around the globe are all familiar with Facebook. The question here is that how many times a company like Facebook releases their product? Is it once a year? Is it twice a year? What are your thoughts? I'm just pausing for a minute and letting you think how many times would Facebook release their product? And to give you some idea, they are basically releasing every day. And I found out in a case here that in fact they are releasing twice on many days. So it's not only about the software getting patched and released. Very often we're talking about at least 300 odd releases or even 700 odd releases in a year. And that is being agile. That is really being agile. And how do they manage it? What exactly they do? How do they actually release it? How do they test it? There's a huge amount of work going on, not only with reference to testing it, but also with reference to how do they release the software. And Agile is getting extremely popular, not only in Facebook, but we did look at the surveys. There's an extreme importance attached everywhere. And based on version 1 survey, 80% of the population in the West and in Europe are already thinking about basically moving to Agile, or they have moved towards Agile. Now, whenever we start implementing Agile, one thing is sure. We need our ability to increase the frequency of releases. Just like Facebook, one thing is sure, not only we need to adapt better, and when we adapt better, we need to make sure that the releases are happening quite often. It can be once in a month, it can be twice in a month, and that is where we talk about being agile. Now what happens is the ability of the team to deliver software and the amount of work they deliver across multiple iterations or multiple sprints. I hope everybody is familiar with the word sprints and iterations. Iteration or a sprint is basically a small duration, and this duration is around 2 to 4 weeks. And within this 2 to 4 weeks, companies and organizations are able to release software to internal customers or external customers. And the amount of work they do within that one sprint is measured in the terms of story points. More story points they deliver, they say that, okay, this is how they want to increase the velocity. So this particular slide, if you look at it, in sprint 1, there were 35 story points that were delivered by the team. Sprint 2, 41 points. And over a period of time, even though you would see that sprint 3 and sprint 4 were a little less, but after some time, the amount of work that the team is delivering stabilizes, and it becomes, or it plateaus. What we have observed is that if the testing is not agile, and specifically if automation is not there, then after some time the velocity tapers. So if you look on the slide, after sprint 10, on sprint 11 and sprint 12, suddenly the velocity tapers, and there is no way the team would be able to manage the ability to deliver in similar manner as earlier if they don't think about automation. Why does it happen? Now, this is another diagram where we show that after the initial preparation, and when we're talking about releases happening in sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3, sprint 4, and sprint 5, as more and more releases happen, the need for automation increases. Here is the reason why basically the need for automation increases. Now, on this slide, when you look at it, we have columns listed out the number of test cases we will design for a particular sprint. So for column 1, which is marked out in blue color, it says for sprint 1 we have test cases which we have created. Let's say we created 100 test cases. In sprint 2 we added another 100 test cases marked in green. And in sprint 3 we add another 100 test cases marked in red. And in sprint 4 we have another 100 test cases added. So what happens is in sprint 1 the workload that the testing team has is just plain 100 test cases. In sprint 2, not only we have to test the new 100 test cases which are designed in the sprint 2, but we also have to make sure that we do regression testing for the test cases which were already there in sprint 1. This is how basically as the sprint increases, the amount of work for the testing team may exponentially increase. For example, in sprint 1, we had only 100 test cases, but in sprint 2 it increases to 200, and in sprint 3 it becomes 300, and in sprint 4 it may become 400. So, and if it keeps on going, the number of test cases that the testing team have to test, retest, and do regression testing for is tremendously high. And that is the reason there is a tremendous need for automation. And that is where Selenium comes into the game. We say that the most popular tool in today's Agile world is Selenium. Reason being is Selenium not only helps in UI level automation, but it is also helping automation driven testing at all the levels. It can be at the unit level, it can be at the integration level, which is the API level, and it can also be obviously at the web level. It's a web-based tool. Normally we use it for automating web browsers, but Selenium is nowadays used for mobile-based automation. Selenium is also being used for API automation, and Selenium integrates very well with JUnit. It integrates very well with TestNG and other star unit level automation frameworks. That is the reason we say there is a strong connection between Agile development projects and Selenium. And we have seen that many organizations are using Selenium whenever we have Agile implementations. That is the intent of this webinar. We wanted to prove and we wanted to showcase that one of the most important tools for Agile development is Selenium. But having said that, Selenium has some challenges, and that was the part 2 of our webinar. We would look now at some of the typical challenges. What I am going to show you, I will also take you through some coding and some screenshots of Selenium IDE and how we use it using Eclipse. Let's first look at some of the challenges that we have listed out. By the way, any questions till now? Do we have any questions on why Selenium should be used for Agile? Any thoughts? Otherwise, we'll just go ahead and basically start covering the challenges part. I hope it's okay with everybody. All right, so let's move ahead. I have listed down 5 major challenges. They may be not in the order that the first one is the most important and the 5th one basically is the least important one. But I'm just going to go through one by one. The first challenge that is there is called as a locator strategy. Let me show you an example and what exactly is the locator strategy. What happens is when we look at Selenium, Selenium basically automates at web level or browser level. And let me show you how does it automate. All right, is my screen visible? One minute, guys. I'm just trying to bring up my Selenium IDE, and I'm on Firefox as well. So if you look at basically, this is a sample HTML page just to make you guys understand what is locator strategy and what can go wrong. I'm going to open a new test case here. And I will do some basically, I'll just show you exactly what do we mean by the locator strategy. So if you look at it here, I just use, this is the Selenium IDE on the right side, and this is my Firefox web browser. Selenium IDE works with web browser, which is basically Firefox. Sorry, I'll just bring it up again. And if you look at it, what we did is I just used the select option, and I am trying to select a particular element on a page. And once I click on that, and when I go and say find, you will see that it tries to find that out. This is how basically we say that this is where my objects are, this is where the locators are. And the locator that it is using is basically all these different locators. Let's say we are using a link here. I can also use this, it will still locate. I can use an XPath, it can still locate. I hope you can see that what we have done is that this particular JSP link is what we are trying to locate, and we selected that in the IDE. and when I click find, it is able to find that. It actually turns it yellow. Okay. And there are different ways by which we are trying to locate that particular web element. That is the reason it is called as locator. In this case now it is basically a XPath. And if I use the original one, this is basically the link. All these are okay to be used. Now the challenge here is, and we are discussing the challenges that Selenium has. Let's say that we have used CSS, which is cascaded style sheet, as one of the locators. If I just try to locate it, it runs fine. But for example, if a developer basically changes a page and this particular link is missed out, let me show you. There is another page where this link is completely missed out. On this page, there is a link called JSP page. And in the second version of the HTML page which the developer created, they accidentally missed that particular link. As a testing team member, my automation script should be able to tell that this particular link is wrong or it is missing. And if I use the previous locator, let's see what happens. Did you notice what happened? I have not changed the script. I have basically using the same locator. Ideally, it should have said that this particular element is not there, and it should not have located that. But the JSP link which is missing on the new page, it is not able to tell that there is a problem there. Rather, it actually goes to the next link. Let me show you once again. This is the original file where we had two links. Okay? And when I say select and when I say find, it is able to find the JSP page. So testing team wants to identify whether the JSP link is existing or not. And as a test, when we run it on a second page, in that the JSP link has been omitted by the developers, and that should have been a defect. But if I use a script, all right, so there are questions here. How does the HTML tag code look like? Sure, I'll show you. So there is a tool called Firebug. And when you click on the Firebug, you can actually see the HTML code. Let me show you the HTML code, both on this screen. Yeah, here you are. And the next one. So for this particular link here, sorry. Yeah, so this is where the HTML tags are. So if you look at it, this, and that is the reason the locator doesn't work fine, and that is where we have to be careful. So if you look at it, this is where the locator was, A, this is basically the CSS that we have, and there was another locator with the same tag, A. So what happens is, and that is where we have to be very careful. Yeah. So did you guys see that I'm just letting you know where does the problem happen. So we are asking and we are showing you that the real problem happens because the HTML tag for JSP is a href this, and here also we have got this as same. So and on this page, when you have the link gone, sorry. it still tries to find and locate that out, and it goes basically this is where we are. So that is the reason one big mistake that most of the first timers on Selenium do, and most of us do, is that we tend to basically ignore the importance of identifying unique locators. So if I basically change, and if I had the right strategy for the locators, this problem should not have come. Let me show you how we could have solved that. Let me go back to the first page again, and rather than choosing this, had I choose this link, this still finds, and when I go here, it will not. And normally it would throw an exception. If I am running a script, since the link is missing, it would have thrown me an exception. Other than CSS, even if I had used XPath, this also would have given me error. There's one simple XPath, this would have again created a problem. Now the problem here is, and let me go back to our slide. All right, guys. So if you have questions, please feel free to ask, and I'll keep on looking at my chat window, and I'll answer that. So what happens is that the way Selenium works is that you have options for locators. You just saw that it can be name, it can be link, it can be ID, it can be CSS, it can be XPath, or it could be others. And whenever we are using locators, and whenever we are trying to find elements using those locators, we have to ensure that that locator is unique across the entire HTML page. Otherwise, Selenium cannot find the right element, and we will start committing mistakes. And that is the example that I just showed you. Now, just to resolve these challenges, I'm going to basically show you how there are various other tricky locations or locators that we can solve. Okay, so we will look by tag. Then we will go by basically how do you locate by nth element, how do we locate for a form element, how do you locate for radio element, how do you locate for a checkbox. That's how we will try to do. So I have created the sample HTML page, and we have got different web elements here, starting with text boxes. We have got basically the radio buttons, we have got checkboxes, we have got other elements, plus paragraphs and tables. And I'll show you what basically should be done, and which basically locators are good to have, and which are not. So if I go step by step, let's correct this out. And in this case, I would have rather not use that. I should actually and look at the locator here. I'll again use this select here, and I'll bring it here. So here it is using a name tag. Name is equal to first, and I should be able to do it very nicely. There should be no issues with that. Similarly, if I were to do it for the next one, and if I select this one, look at basically it is a clear unique identification. The first one basically says name is equal to first name. The second one says name is equal to last name, and we will never make any issues when I want to find it out in different implementations, different implementation across the browsers as well. What if basically if you were using something else here? Okay, I'll just show you how does this look like. This one is also good. I just open the PPT here, and this one is what we have. I just copied it from there and I'll just show you. This is what we had. If we are using CSS, then we would probably use input and name is equal to first name. I will prefer this because what we have observed is that when we are doing cross-browser testing, CSS is the fastest both in Firefox and Chrome, but obviously it may be a challenge in IE. So if it becomes, and if we want to test Internet Explorer, then I would be using XPath in that case. All right, sorry. All right, so this is the one for the text name, and let's look at basically what should be our locator strategy for our XPath here, which is basically radio button. Sorry. So I'll use the select button. I'll click on this one. See what has happened here. It says name is equal to locators, and when I go again and when I say select, and I do name is equal to locators here, this one basically will create a similar problem like the one we saw earlier. If we remove XPath and if we only have CSS, then the locator actually is pointing to the first one in the list of radio buttons. So rather than using name is equal to locators, it's better that I use this one, which basically is, still it is not good. Name is equal to locators. I'll just show you where the problem is. So what I just copied from the Selenium IDE is this one. And what is preferred is that we qualify the locator. The locator is the tag behind the input name, and if we specify the value, we will never make a mistake, guys. As part of my locator strategy, I will qualify with the right value, and then it will never cause a problem. So if I use this in place of the locator that the Selenium IDE gave me, that would be much better. So if you see, it's very slight coloring that here in this case it will show. It will highlight it with a green symbol on the top. That's how it is. And if I want to use, so basically instead of CSS, if I want to use XPath here, I will change the CSS here and make it XPath, because that XPath is the name of this locator here. This particular XPath is what we are trying to locate as a radio button, and I'm qualifying the input value with that particular XPath here. And it is saying CSS is equal to input. I hope you guys are seeing on the right side of the IDE the text box which is adjacent to target. Look at the cursor which is moving here. Name is equal to locators, and the value that we have now is XPath. And when I say select find, it actually finds that out. I don't know whether it is visible there. It is a small green box that you will see on the radio button for the XPath. All right, so we just wanted to make sure that you understand the importance of selecting the locator strategy for the radio button. Let's move ahead. Here again, when we are using basically the locator strategy for a checkbox, similar stuff, I'm going to do the select here, and I'm going to do this. Look, name is equal to Selenium. And when I do the next one, this is where the change happens, because if I say name is equal to Selenium, and if I show you the HTML tag for that one, this is where actually this is the checkbox HTML tag. This is what we have. Value is equal to Selenium, name is equal to Selenium. So if I only search on Selenium, chances are that I'll start committing mistakes. So it's always good that I use a qualifier here. And the qualifier that I'll be using for a checkbox is similar. I'll use CSS is equal to name, name is equal to Selenium value is equal to Selenium ID. Let me show you how it will go through there. Something that I might have typed it wrongly. One minute, guys. All right, I'll fix that up and we'll probably proceed with the next one here. But yeah, if I just want to make sure that I'm highlighting CSS, and if sometimes CSS doesn't work, we should go with the XPath, because XPath is the the most appropriate one in case if we want to make sure that it is the relative path or the absolute path, and most of the time it would work. So sometimes if the CSS is not working, recommended is that we start using the XPath there with the proper overall qualifying details on that. All right. So let's move ahead and show you some more examples on the locator here. Now we'll just quickly show you how to locate the child element, sibling element, locating table cells, and locating header and footer information, and I'm highlighting using CSS. Most of the time I prefer using CSS because of the speed issues. If you have got many web elements and the automation pack grows, it is always preferable that CSS is used. CSS is faster than XPath, and it is supported by the newer browsers, including the latest browsers from IE. So, let me quickly show you one of them, and then probably we'll move to the next challenge. And if there are any questions on locator, we'll probably take that up. Right. So I think that is where I agree that there was an issue there, that there was a space between Selenium and ID. Thank you, Michael, for pointing that out. Let me quickly see if that works. In fact, that also probably was not working according to me. Yeah, so that there is something else. I'll probably check it out and I'll let you know, guys, where the problem is. It's not the space. Anyways, let's move ahead, and I'll make sure that we'll see the other locators here. And these kind of challenges happen. So while we are seeing it, that yes, look, it should have worked here, we'll look at why that problem happened. And when you actually see it in real life, and when your automation scripts stop working, we need to be careful about using the right locators. So we will look at basically this one here, which is CSS, the element, the list element here. I'll just copy it from here. That's how basically if you have multiple elements and you want to select second in the list here, instead of this IDE, we want to select this one. I'll go with this. And this is where, if you see, there is a mention of the child. It is going with the relative reference. If I change it to 3, it goes to the last one. And if I select the 1, instead of 3, I make it 1, then I can choose the first one. That is the beauty of using right locator strategy. And let me show you the next one. So if it is a paragraph and we want to make sure that we select the right paragraph, then we are qualifying it with the proper thing there. Let us see the HTML tag for the paragraph here. So if you look at it, what we are trying to do, this is the one which is basically not having any kind of identifier. This one doesn't have an identifier. This is with identifier here, where the ID is the first chapter. That is the reason we are giving ID there. And if you're not giving the ID, then we are basically looking at this particular strategy here, where we say it is paragraph is first chapter, plus basically we are saying it begins with the P here, so we are not selecting the ID, and that is the reason basically it goes for the without the identifier. Let me show you with reference to our table here. This is the table, and I want to select some stuff from there. Locating table cells is again a challenge, and if we don't use the right strategy, it may actually be really problematic. So this is how we selected the first cell, and if I look at it and if I basically make it 2 here, then I can select the second cell, which is number 2. Similarly for the row as well, I can choose the row and something like that. So what we'll do is, for the sake of time, let's move to the other challenges. Anyways, I'll be sharing the slide, and you can look at the way that these locators are working, and I'll share this web HTML page as well for you guys to try this out using Selenium IDE in Firefox. Let's move to our second challenge. Our second challenge basically is so if you look at it, when we have dynamic rendering of elements, this is where the challenge lies. When we have something like this, and we say many a times what happens is people and developers, when they are designing their web pages, the elements are not there and the pages are constructed dynamically. Now when we say pages are constructed dynamically, this particular part is something which can be different every time the page gets rendered. So when, for example, if it gets rendered, it may be some other number. Every time ASP is used or some specific JSP is used, the span ID, this particular things will change. And if you were using a normal locator, this will not work. So what should be our strategy for making sure that this works? So this is where I had just created basically the locator here. Let me show you where this is on the HTML tag. This is where basically the HTML tag is, CT100 there, and the locator that I'm using here is so what we have done is that since we know that we have to highlight this, we are using regular expression and we say ID is equal to star equal to and basically header. So anything which has header at the end, which means will be properly located by us. So we are using some kind of a regular expression to make sure that the IDs are properly identified that way. In a similar manner here, this number will change. The way that the dynamic rendering happen, the particular content of the page, the HTML tag, the ID will be dynamically generated, and instead of having 55 here, this number can vary. So I would never hard code this. Rather than that, we would actually have some kind of an expression which would be able to resolve this problem. So how do I do that? This is where we have, this is where if you look at it, we had text dash 55 here, and when I basically say find, I'm able to find it, but I'm not hard coding it. The one that I'm using is this one. So if you look at it here, the idea is that we are talking about that it begins with the text, and anything which is beginning with the text, we are not worried about the number at the end. That's how the locators which are dynamically getting rendered can also be located by Selenium. So that is our second challenge. Any questions here, guys, or should we move on to the third challenge that I wanted to show you? Yes, that's right. The idea is that if we have underscore header, that will not hurt us. But in case if there is something else coming there instead of underscore, we don't know. So, but I agree, if it is getting always, and we should look at dynamically rendered pages, and if we have something like underscore header, then it is always good to use more text than less text. I agree with that, Michael. Thank you so much for highlighting that. All right. Let's move on to our next challenge here. All right. The next challenge is a little tricky. I'll just show you what exactly we are talking about. We are saying that there are dynamic JavaScript pages, and there are certain things which not only about rendering, but there could be certain actions that JavaScript can actually generate, and that would be a little trickier for us to control. Let me show you what we're talking about. Okay, we have this. See, what we are doing here is that there are two pages we have. I'll just show you what is happening here. And if I load this page here, there's a start button. Only when I click the start button, it behaves like this. I'll again show you what happened. So if you look at it, the page is such that when I click on the start button, it shows loading, and then after that basically this hello world happens. But it is in the same page, so it's no problem. Element is hidden, but it is actually available and the rendering is okay. And if there is a second one where it, and in this case the rendering happens after we click on the start button. The first one, the rendering was happening and the page was right there. In this case the element is rendered after we click the start button. Now this will become a challenge, guys, and this has to be resolved. So what happens is, if a normal script, if I don't wait enough, then I will not be able to track this kind of a situation. So there are specific way of solving this issue. So there are basically two type of waits that we can use, specifically when we are using Java code. I can use an explicit wait like this, where we are running a loop, and after basically after we click the start button, I'm going to wait for some time, see if the hello world is coming or not. Only when it comes, I will break. And every time the thread would be slept for a second, and I'll keep on trying. So this is an explicit wait that I will introduce in my code. And another way that probably will happen is that there is a explicit wait already provided by the WebDriver, which is the latest version, and it can be used by this code here. So what it does is that it says if there's a dynamic element that we can generate, and that dynamic element can actually do asynchronous wait. It will keep on waiting until and unless there is an expected condition will be met. And it works in a similar way, but actually it is much cleaner. Let me show you the code also. So here we have the typical problem that I showed you. This is using Java code, and what we have done is we have created a class which is basically dynamic JSP, and underneath the dynamic JSP we are trying to do basically, if you look at it, we open the first site, then we have given some implicit wait at the top, And after that, we basically are saying we'll click the button start, and then we are using the for loop so that we know that the rendering has happened. Let me show you this particular code here. It's taking some time to run here. It's just bringing up. The Firefox basically is brought up. The page is there. It clicks on the start button, and then it checks and it comes out. This is one way of doing it. Let me show you the other way that I would recommend rather than this particular for loop. I'm going to comment my previous code and use an explicit wait condition which I have available from a method or basically a function WebDriver wait, where we give driver and it actually waits for a certain number of seconds and keep on trying. And obviously it is also much better than having a for loop implemented like that. This is given by the WebDriver itself. Let me say Control S, save this file. I'll go back and run this file again. I'm using JUnit as my framework rather than TestNG here, and we are using WebDriver 2.0 or Selenium 2.0, the latest libraries. Cool. See, what we have done is, what the challenge was that in case if there is a dynamic JSP or there is a reason by which the element itself gets loaded after some time and we want our script to wait for that element to get loaded up, it is always necessary that we introduce something which is called as explicit wait. This explicit wait can be provided either using for loop or by using WebDriver wait method or function, which probably gives us much better results, or it is much more cleaner. Results are same, I would say, but it is much cleaner code and recommended code that I would suggest. Any questions here, guys? All right, so we'll move on to our next challenge. Yeah, so same thing happens. On the previous challenge, we said that there could be possibilities that the element itself is not visible, and we want to wait for that. There could be some elements which only get visible after some time. Like for example, the button is disabled, and the button gets enabled after basically certain actions are done. Or a menu item is not available, and menu item is available after certain actions are happening. Or a particular link is not clickable and it becomes clickable after some time. So what happens is that there is another method by which we can use element to be clickable, and this works very well as well using the same object which is called the WebDriver wait here. Now the fourth challenge that we have, and that is something happens initially, and I've seen that it becomes a challenge, especially when we need some evidence that our test has failed or test has passed. I have run into an issue where my developers have come back and said that give us screenshots or give us basically a reason or give us where basically the script failed. We know that the script has failed, the test cases have failed, but it would be really nice if the screenshots can be captured. I'll just show you the code that I'm going to use for capturing the screenshot in my Java. So this is the code here, and I'll also share these files with you guys post this session. If you have any questions, you can ask me post this session as well. Let me run this out here. Yeah, so it's opening the Agile Testing Alliance site, and I'm just going to take a screenshot of the test that we ran. And the code that I'm using for taking a screenshot is this. Just before the tear down happens, just before the test ends, I want to make sure that the screenshot is taken. what I will do is I will create a file and use a specific function called get screenshot, which is provided by the WebDriver, and I'll basically create that file, and then using basically the file copy utility, I will be able to create that and create it in my C drive. This is where my screenshot got saved. Let me quickly show you where is it. It's in my C drive. If the folder is not there, it will create a folder temp, whatever name I had given, and there would be something, the screenshot would be there, guys. So it's pretty neat, because many a times when our test cases fail, it is always required that we show where on what page or what reason is there. It is also a good debugging exercise, because many a times if our locators are not working fine, or for example if our locator strategy has not been rock solid, and when we run our Java code and it breaks, it is easier for us to find out what happened and what was the reason the element was not visible. All right, so this was what I felt was one very good challenge which could be solved by capturing the screenshots. The last one, which I would say is an important one, what happens is that over a period of time, the Java code or your scripts can become really unmaintainable. As more and more elements get into the code, multiple actions can happen on that, and after some time, the file actually starts becoming humongous. It becomes very large, and then we don't know which element is there, where the element is there, and it is very, very difficult for us to understand and maintain. And in that case, what we actually go for is the solution would be to maintain the script is to use something which is called as page object model. Let me show you one script which does not use the page object model, and then we will use page object model and show you how it becomes really maintainable. So this is my one script which is not using page object. It is a one single script. Let me run you through that. We have basically JUnit before method. We'll open the browser. I'm going to use the Firefox driver here. And after method, basically we will just do the teardown, which is the close the browser. And in the test here, I'm going to use basically simple stuff. It is a Google search page. And all, if you look at it, most of my tests will start getting clubbed down in this particular piece, which is the @test annotation. All the tests will get created here. And as the script grows, you will see that there will be tons and tons of elements which will get added here. There will be tons and tons of actions which will be there, and the file will keep on growing, and it will be becoming very, very tough for us to manage that out. So let me run this out for you first. What are we trying to achieve? And then I'll show you how we solve that using page object model. It's a simple exercise that I just wanted to show you. I went on a Google page, I cleared that out, then I entered Selenium in the text box, and I clicked basically the search button. And then I checked after the click has been done or not, whether what is the title of the page. In this case, the title of the page was basically what we really wanted. It was saying Selenium Google search. All right, so that's what we did here. And this is without the page object model. And the problem here is that as long as this script is simple, this is the code. But as more and more web pages gets added, they would be all written one after the other, and it becomes really humongous code, and it becomes really, really difficult for us to maintain. So rather than having one single file, what we do is we use page object model. And in page object model, what we do is we create separate pages. So for example, I would create a class called Google search page, and I will basically have a private method which is a driver, and look at this web element Q. Now ideally I would not want it to be named Q, and I will tell you the reason what happens. So the page object model and the page factory pattern used by Google allows me to name it such that if the name tag or ID tag is Q, automatically it will be able to find that element. We don't need to write any code behind it. I'll just show you. So if you look at it, this is what we are trying to look at, and I'll bring my ID here. It says name is equal to Q. This name is equal to Q means this particular text box that Google has, they have named it as a unique Q, and the ID is something else. So I could have used either of these. In this case, since I'm using name, I should be able to find it using Selenium IDE. And in my code, if I'm using a page object model and I'm creating a separate page for Google search page, I just need to create a web element queue and it would automatically find it. But it is not a good idea to use only the name given by the developers. Rather than that, we can actually use annotation called as find by, and I can use whichever name, or I can use different CSS, XPath things as well, and I should be able to create my own variable names. In this case, I have a search button, but the search button would point to an element which is basically identified by the name tag BTNG. And the BTNG is the same thing here, which is basically the search button. And then what we do is, it has a public constructor. We have to pass a web driver object into it. And there are methods that I will define on this page. Get title is a method, search for is a method, and I can keep on growing all the functions on this page one by one. All the code gets encapsulated for every page. So page object model becomes neat, and it allows me to create separate pages, and it allows me to have separate methods defined for the various activities that I will be doing for that page. And I need a separate code which will basically glue our page objects which we created. Now this is basically the single function which will get executed using JUnit, and look what we are doing here. We defined, or we created an object for the class file which we just created, the page object class that we just created, and we named it as a page. So for every page we'll create a class. Now if we are accessing that class here, then I will create using page factory pattern. I will pass basically a driver object into it, and I will basically give a class file which is basically Google search.class. And then I will pass on a method called page.open, and I will pass on the link here. And it will point here. What happens in my open method, I will basically be getting the URL which I supply, and it will call the driver and it will get the URL here. That's how the two classes gets glued. Let me run this out for you first, and then I'll show you what is going on. It's almost the same code, except that rather than having our test method, look at what basically our test method is. Our test method is very simple. We basically say page search for Selenium. The methods are much more understandable, much more readable, much more maintainable. And then I say assert that, get the page title, and it should contain string Google. And I think that solves the problem, because in this case the code that will be running is this, and the code related to the web page is in a separate file or a class, which is this file, which keeps all the code necessary for that page. It keeps a list of all the elements, and if there is any change in the element, I can go out and change this element, and it becomes very, very maintainable. And that basically is the suggested model if we are going ahead with a full-fledged automation, and if we have multiple pages to be done. So what we'll do is, let's say we will create a page object for login page, we'll create a page object for home page, we'll create something for shop cart page, then we'll link it to the web driver, and we will keep on creating separate pages. And it becomes very, very easy for us to maintain. Different people can also work, different automation engineers, different testers can all create different pages, and it can be glued together. That will make our code very, very maintainable. So this is it, guys. I have covered all the 5 main challenges that I think we should be knowing, and we should be using that. Any questions? Right. So I would also like to tell you that Agile Testing Alliance has got training programs and has got certification programs, and there is one specific certification which is only geared towards Selenium, which is called as Certified Professional Selenium Automation Testing. Whatever I am talking about, it goes through that, and then there is an assessment, and we have seen that people get hugely benefited by using this kind of a training program. This is my hashtag. This is where you can connect with me. My email address is aditya.garg@agiletestingalliance.org. You can also connect with me on my LinkedIn profile, and my Twitter handle is RBG India. Any questions, guys? Bettina, are you there? Can you please help us basically identify if there are any questions sent to you? Any feedback here? Anything that I need to tell? Otherwise, I think we had planned an hour for this webinar. I hope all of you enjoyed. Thank you so much for attending this.